Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and welcome back to the final installment of our weekly LEGO Elves review series, where each week I have dived into one particular year of one of my favorite and arguably one of the most underrated LEGO themes, LEGO Elves. We started off in 2015, the introduction to Elvendale. 2016 was the year of the dragon, 2017 was the goblin year, and finally, LEGO Elves ended in 2018, with one final showdown between the forces of light and shadow. Let's dive into LEGO Elves, the final year, right now. So this is it. This is the final year of LEGO Elves, and what was the entire point of the year? Well, the year focused on the elves facing off against the root of all evil, the reason as to why all of the other villains in the prior years had been evil to begin with, and that was the evil hailing from the Shadow Realm in the form of the dark elf witch Noctura. It also introduced the concept of the guardian animals, guardians and custodians of each of the individual elements, each of these animals representing one of the main elements that we had seen throughout our journey so far, with two additional elements, the elements of light and shadow, playing important pivotal roles in LEGO Elves. This is the year where everything really came to a head. The elves each had their own unique signature elemental weapons. It was a climactic final battle between good and evil, light and shadow. And while 2018 may not have initially been envisioned as the final year of LEGO Elves, by the time 2017 hit, the writing was on the wall, sales were not going too well, and if you want to learn more about that, check out last week's video on LEGO Elves 2017 to learn what exactly happened. And because of that, LEGO decided to cut back significantly on their budget for LEGO Elves, producing fewer sets than usual, having pretty much no form of TV show outside of web shorts, which didn't really tell the story in its entirety, and scaling back the number of sets, and also recrafting this story to focus on the final battle between Shadow and Light. The storyline itself, honestly, could have been a lot better. Obviously, they did not have the same budget they had in 2017. They didn't have a full-on Netflix animated show with some of the best animation ever. They pretty much just had little 4 to 5 minute webisodes on LEGO's YouTube channel, which they could kind of use to tell the vestiges of what could have been a really deep story, but eventually was just a very simple battle between good and evil. Unfortunately, this meant a regression in animation and a regression in storytelling. However, this regression did not extend to the sets. While most final years of LEGO themes often end with a whimper instead of a bang, with having scaled back sets with lesser and smaller molds, they actually did a really good job at tying up this year of LEGO Elves, and I'm honestly really impressed by just how good each and every one of the sets are. Sure, it wasn't quite at the peaks of what LEGO Elves could have accomplished in set design, but the designers were working with more limitations here. They were working with less, and with less they were still managing to do a lot. In fact, the mini dolls for this final year of Elves might be my favorite they ever did, and a lot of that is because of not only the unique elemental weapons, which are all utilizing different existing LEGO pieces, some recolored in new elements to form very unique signature weapons from a bow to a staff to a fire hammer, but they also recolored the vine element introduced for LEGO Elves in transparent colors, trans light blue, trans orange, to evoke the power of the elements flowing from the hands of the elves themselves, which I think was a really cool touch and something that was a long time overdue. The only kind of miss here for me is the villain faction being in the form of the dual molded bats. They're alright, but honestly, I'm not the most impressed by them. They're just kind of okay to me. I did like the goblins a lot better because they were actually posable, but since every other aspect of the sets were so well done, it's hard to complain. This year, despite it being the final year, was a year where LEGO Elves kinda went back to what made 2016 sell so well, having sets focused on just a variety of different multicolored animals. And because of that, LEGO Elves 2018 actually did really well in terms of sales. In fact, it did so well that probably they would have continued Elves if 2017 hadn't performed so poorly. They decided to disband the entire internal creative team and focus them on something else. It is a shame, really, how that all happened. But we'll save a lot of those thoughts for the conclusion, and I think now is just about the right time to dive into LEGO Elves 2018. Starting off, of course, with the mini dolls and the bats. For the final year of LEGO Elves, the main squad was outfitted with arguably their best and coolest looks yet. Each and every one of the characters received a signature weapon or shield in which they would use for battle against the main villain introduced, Noctura. This was technically not Noctura's first appearance in the story. In fact, it was revealed that she was the voice of the Shadow Fountain all along, the very fountain that corrupted both of the previous antagonists and now serves to conquer the rest of the world. The elves eventually are introduced to a new character in this story arc as well, Lumia, who is the guardian of the elemental power of light. Alongside Lumia as the guardian of light are the guardians of the rest of the elements in animal form, and Noctura is the guardian of shadow who was banished to a shadow world thousands of years ago. The collectible of this year's wave was little miniature bats who served as the minions of Noctura. All of these were dual molded with fun transparent colors like trans purple, trans neon orange, trans green, trans pink, and all sorts of different colors to showcase their different personalities. And one of these bats would actually end up helping the good guys after being reformed to some extent. In addition to the bats, we also got a host of a couple of different animals, namely a turtle themed around elves, as well as a bird, with the return of a bear plus an evil-looking purple animal as well. Altogether, my opinion is that these are probably some of the best outfits that all of the elves ever received, aside from maybe Emily, who for the finale I really did wish she actually got some sort of Elvendale-inspired armor. I feel like it was long overdue to just have her in these standard clothes every single year, and it would have been cool to have her with a slightly different outfit for the final showdown. Otherwise though, you can see all the different styles of armor and detailing on each of the characters. Theron has received some sort of a shoulder guard armor here, featuring some dark brown and copper armor detailing. Ira over here has a really nicely detailed dragon-inspired emblem with the wings on the side of the shoulders, also featuring metallic gold integrated into the color scheme. Since all the characters feature these battle straps in which they can presumably stow their weapons for battle, they all have these really nice straps across the bodies. Azari has a really nicely detailed dark magenta and metallic gold torso, and then finally Nida has the simplest of the bunch, just a very simple silver wave, but also featuring one of those shoulder straps that was really cool that all the characters got. Unfortunately, Emily again just was completely plain. She did get a new outfit, but still wearing that signature striped shirt. The really standout character here is Lumia, who was a really brilliant white and gold type of detailing. Almost similar to Takanuva, the Toe of Light in Bionicle, she wields the power of light, and as you can see, there is a metallic gold emblem on the chest in terms of ornate detailing. She has a really nice symbol of the 4 key elements on the torso there, and a nice dual molded skirt with gold and white for all the detailing. Noctura, on the other hand, had 2 separate appearances, and in the webisode she was depicted to be flying, so I guess that this was sort of supposed to be the skirt billowing in the wind. I think having a new piece for the skirt element showcasing it's kind of made out of shadows would have been really cool, and maybe elevated her above the standard villain, but what we got is still cool, and I do like the dual-sided cape with the teal coloration on one side and the black coloration on the other, which is very, very nice, plus she's sporting a unique hairstyle in rubber as well. In terms of the collectibles of the bats, honestly, they're okay. I think the baby dragons were just a lot cuter and more fun to collect. The bats are alright, but it is once again the villain army being made up of the collectibles of the season, which is a little bit strange, but I think it is still something that works for what they were trying to do. We had secondary collectibles in the form of the new mold introduced for LEGO Elves in 2018, the element crystals here, which actually is a piece that continues to be used in LEGO's portfolio even to this day. But with our looks at the minifigures squared away, let's go ahead and take a look at our first set, going in chronological order of how they were encountered. The very first set that we encounter is part of the first wave, and that is 41192 Azari and the Fire Lion Capture. Technically, this is first seen in a vision of Emily dreaming about the Fire Lion being captured by Noctura, and we never really get to see the events play out other than through the vision, but this set is as good as any to showcase the introduction to the conflict of the theme, introducing the elemental beasts and their capture resulting in the loss of powers of anyone who's associated with their element. Adjusted for inflation, this set, which retailed for $30 back in 2018 with 360 pieces, is around $37 today, and honestly, I feel like it's one of the best values out of really any elf set that we've gotten so far. It introduced a brand new mold for the head of the lion here, and a really nice recolor of the Chima fire wings in the transparent yellow and magenta coloration, which is definitely one of the most visually striking designs that we've gotten for that piece. It also came with a villainous little cart here, which you could use to capture the lion beast, as well as a small side build showcasing the Shadow World terrain. Now, the set included several different minifigures, including the Shadow Vat Vespe, who was a green-colored bat, Azari for this wave, as well as the Shadow Bat Molo, the purple-colored one. The green-colored bat Vespe was actually exclusive to the set, and you can actually use him to pilot the cart here, whereas Molo is on the back there, who's attached to this little watering can, which presumably they just use to transport things from here to there. Now, the entire way the set plays out is that you have the Fire Lion, and the entire point is for the villains to capture this elemental beast. As you can see, it works okay. I think it sort of works. You really have to get the chains around the head, and having the mane be made out of fire certainly doesn't help all that much when trying to capture it, but once you get the chain around the head, you know, it might take a few tries, you will have successfully captured the Fire Lion, and now it is ready to be brought back to the evil elf Noctura. It's a pretty simple function, but one that works fairly well to actually have this bat-like cart machine capturing the lion. Do I necessarily believe that this could have easily overpowered the lion such that it became captured? I don't necessarily think so, but that's why in the animations, when it happens, you can see Noctura actually taking part in the capture herself. Unfortunately, Noctura is not included in the set, and I think it could have benefited from one other mini-doll. Technically, there are 3 characters in the sets, and LEGO counts these as full-on characters, but I really don't. They're basically little animals, and really, for a $30 set having only 1 mini-doll, it does feel a bit disappointing, but hey, you know, that is LEGO Elves for you. Azari is sporting her signature weapon for this lineup, which is the Fire Hammer. It's a really interesting weapon for a fire-wielding character, but I really love the way they built it up using flame yellowish-orange pieces and transparent red along with the emblems on the side. It just looks super cool, and there is a spot for Azari to sit on top of the lion's back. An interesting thing they did with this particular lion is that articulation-wise, it actually has a lot more articulation than most of the other elves' creatures. The legs thankfully have been solved from the previous problem that plagued a lot of the dragons that I complained at length about in the prior week's videos, which prevented you from bending them out like this. Thankfully, you can actually do that for this lion, so you can really get a much more dynamic pose, almost akin to the Chima legend beasts. I really like how this one's done. Using the flame yellowish-orange color for a lion totally makes sense. And while a lion isn't necessarily a brand new concept for a LEGO action-adventure theme, especially a buildable lion like this, what is cool is the addition of the fire aspects. They even added these flames shooting up alongside the lion. I'm not really sure if those are supposed to be wings or maybe just extensions of the lion, sort of like an extension of the mane being lit aflame, but I like how they add an extra aura to the character and make it feel a lot more special than just a standard brick-built lion. The way the jaw works is actually utilizing the same exact piece they used for the dragon, so while it is a little reptilian in nature, I honestly think it looks fine for the lion, and the head printing and molding itself definitely makes it very obviously a lion and nothing else like it's being repurposed for a different reason. Now, in terms of the little side build here, you have one of Noctura's spiders. These spiders didn't really appear as an enemy opponent until the final battle, where she sends a horde of spiders at the turtle, but I think it works well to include these in the sets, and it was a nice recolor of the Harry Potter spider, this one in the spring yellow color, which is a very, very interesting one. And on the inside, you can see just a little bit of a hint towards where the bats sleep. Yes, once again, if you are familiar with the LEGO Elves videos I've been putting out, every single building-based elves set, for whatever reason, has to include a bed. I don't really know why that's the case, and maybe that's just kind of a play pattern they figured that young children and young girls really like to have, but they've done something really unique and fun with the beds here, where obviously, bats sleep upside down, so they actually have the beds upside down, and you mount the bats upside down like so. They're actually color-coded for the 2 bats that you get in the set, and that is very, very clever. I really like that feature, and it's not the last time we would see an upside-down bed featured in the LEGO Elves sets, but I think it's quite nice. It's very cute, and it's a good way to display your characters.
Moving onwards though to the final part of the build, which is of course the capture mechanism, I think this is actually pretty nicely done. I like the integration of the color scheme for this particular wave, having dark blue, teal, and just a little bit of a hint of this transparent neon green is a really cool color scheme to get. And I like how especially you actually have different places to place the bats. Like you can place one of the bats up here, you can place one of them even along the side here, so hanging upside down if you want. You can have one of the bats just be hanging alongside the side of the carriage, or you could even have one attached to the clip of water here, so you can kind of stick it on the clip there, and it's leading you from the fireplace all the way back to Noctura's tower. It's a small little vehicle, but I think it works for the purposes of the set, and overall, for $30, even adjusted for inflation $36, this is pretty good value, and a really good introduction to the world of LEGO Elves. But with the Fire Lion captured, it's now time that we take a look at where the lion and the animals are brought after they're captured. Jumping over to the largest set of Wave 1 in March, we have 41194, Noctura's Tower, and the Earth Fox Rescue. The Earth Fox actually comes into play a little later in the story, but essentially this is the very first new location that we see. The Fire Lion is actually the first to be captured at this tower. Inside the Shadowlands, Noctura has been biding her time and waiting for a chance to release her armies upon the world and take over and flee the Shadowlands. In doing so, she sends her bats through the Shadow Fountain, overpowering previous villain Morgana and wreaking havoc across the land. Once the elemental beasts are captured, they are brought back to have their elemental powers siphoned and drained at this evil tower, and that is exactly what happens to the Fire Lion when it's brought over here. Once captured, the Fire Lion is chained to the tower and has its elemental power drained, causing all fire elves to lose their powers, and this is really where the story begins. Azari is losing her powers, her skin is cold to the touch, and this is the state that Emily arrives in Elvendale with dire warnings of a vision that she had of Noctura's tower, which is really where the action all takes place, all leading up to even the final battle. Now this right here is the Noctura Tower set, and this retailed for $60 or 60 euros when it launched on March 1st, 2018, and it had 646 pieces, which adjusted for inflation is around $74 today. It came with a number of different minifigures, including the Bat Hippo, the orange one, as well as the Bat Molo, the purple one, plus Noctura with a cape, the only version of her that came with a cape, as well as Farin, who did actually appear in a couple of other sets. Now, the main focus of the set is on this evil-looking tower, and while it might not be as big as some other villain layers, it makes up for it by one, having an extensible part that actually was combinable with a future summer set, which we'll take a look at later on, but it also had a wicked transformation feature. Twisting a knob on the back of the building allows the bat wings to rocket upwards and for it to reveal that all of the elemental symbols have been siphoned and captured inside the tower itself. This is another instance of the Waves collectibles all being available in one set, which is something I really appreciate. I'm really glad LEGO did something like that by actually featuring all the collectibles together, so you don't have to buy every single set just to have the complete package. Let's take a look at that transformation feature one more time here, because it is one of the coolest building transformations ever. You just twist a knob on the back, the wings will slowly close up and fold in as the bat head lowers, and as you can see, it almost looks like a realistic bat crouched down with the wings protecting the body. But when she's ready to reveal her full power, you can twist the knob here, and there you have it. The wings unfurl upwards and the bat head is ready to strike. That is such a cool play feature for the tower, and it immediately makes it one of my favorite LEGO Elves buildings, despite the rest of the tower being honestly not super big or bulky compared to a lot of the other villain layers that we got from Elves. That one function alone really cements it as an absolute classic. The only unfortunate thing that I really feel about this set and the tower itself that really could have been improved is, as you can notice, there is literally only one chain available for the Fox included in the set, right here. I don't know exactly how much budget it would have taken, but it would have been really cool to just include 3 more copies of this. They could have just attached the chains here. They even literally include one other chain. They just needed to include another set of locks, and then you could have chained all 4 animals to the tower, which, spoiler alert, is eventually what happens in the story. As it is right now, the entire tower is built around magically chaining up these elemental beasts, but unfortunately, there isn't really an easy way to chain the rest of them. You can literally only do it with the one lock in the set. Otherwise though, there are a couple of really nice aspects to the detailing here. These Shadowlands have a ton of mushrooms and night shrooms growing around them, so there is a big mushroom focus here with the spring yellow color being used for the root of the mushrooms with a teal color on the top. You have some spring yellow spiders scattered around, and some crystals growing out of the center. As you enter the front gate, unfortunately there is no real gate, you just kind of walk into the tower. Would have been cool to get some sort of a mechanism for that. You can see the quintessential LEGO Elves bed. Yes, I am counting that as a bed in our LEGO Elves bed checklist because I actually think it very clearly is a bed. You have a nightstand right here for Noctura to sleep, and you have some depictions of the shadow portal which she can use to eventually enter the world of Elvendale. Over here is just a really simple function where you can pour different potions into the cauldron as Noctura is planning her various misdeeds, and as we move upwards, I think we actually have a reference to LEGO Alpha Team factored in here. Otherwise, I don't know why they would include a standard LEGO minifigure skull, but this jar right here in trans neon orange with a skull in it is actually identical, other than the coloration of the bottom element, to one of Ogle's skeleton bombs that he used in the first wave of LEGO Alpha Team back in 2001. I think it is a pretty direct reference, so it's really cool to see other LEGO themes get referenced here, but otherwise there's honestly not that much going on the second level other than that very nice Easter egg. It pretty much just kind of serves as a trophy room, and I guess maybe a sandwich room too, because I guess she's eating on top of that. And the front of the tower is equally bare bones. There's not a ton going on here, to be completely honest, but you know, it is what it is, and I do like, aesthetically speaking, how they have each of the elements showcased here pertaining to the animals that are waiting to be chained. Of course, folding down the cobweb here allows you to access the key to free the Earth Fox, so Farron can stage a rescue, and on the top here you have those really nice brand new pieces introduced for 2018, which were the elemental crystals. These are all printed in gold, and each of them were basically meant to be placed on the foreheads of the animals, where the way it worked is that once you actually remove it from the stand here, so you remove one of the crystals, you can actually take it, and either you can choose one of two options. You can place it in Noctura's staff, which was basically just a single block element, which allowed you to basically place all four elements on the inside, and for her to be able to wield all of the elements at once, which is a very, very cool staff design. I really like how they're able to pull off the collectible featured in the staff itself. Or you can place the element back where it rightfully belongs, which is on the heads of the creatures, where every single one of the creature heads had an open bar receptacle where you could place the crystals and then finally have them be complete with the exact right crystal needed to complete the animals and restore the elements. Since I am a villain after all, I do have to be on Noctura's side, take the elemental crystal from the creature head and place it up in the top display section because, let's face it, the tower looks a lot cooler with that crystal all fully in place. Moving aside from the tower by itself, let's take a look at the Earth Fox, and this is one of the elemental guardians included for the LEGO Elves sets. Do note that there were supposed to be little tile elements on the feet here. I don't really know where mine went. I must have used it in some other mock at some point. But this is the Earth Fox, and I actually really find the design quite interesting. It almost feels like a kitsune style design, or almost Japanese inspired with the three tails in the back, which is something we would later see in other LEGO themes like Akita from Ninjago Season 11, and I also really like the transparent green crystals growing out of the back, hinting at the earth capabilities of the fox. Unfortunately though, the fox does have the same exact issue as all of the other LEGO Elves animals, aside from the lion and a couple others, where you can't move the legs past this point. So I'd really love to be able to stretch the legs out like this, or maybe even have it in a kicking motion, or crouch down like so, because this feels so much better as a fox, but you can't do that. You have to keep it attached via the joints here. They really just tried to lock the articulation because they wanted kids to be able to play with it easier. And again, you can bend the legs inwards, but not outwards, which I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this point, but I really do wish they managed to factor into a set like this. Otherwise, the fox has a really nice color scheme, and I like the little highlights of lavender factored into the fox as well. I think it adds a pop of character to it. It is utilizing a brand new wolf head, which would not be the last time this exact head would be used. It'd actually be used as a bat head later on, which surprisingly worked pretty well. But as a fox-specific head, I think it works quite nicely. I like the overall design of the animal and the color scheme, just wish that you could actually articulate it a bit more. So talking about the value of the set, you get Theron with the exclusive Earth Shield build, which is quite nice. You get 2 of the bats, including one of the main bats that actually turncoats Noctura and helps out the heroes, and then you have the main villain of the wave fully decked out with her evil cloak. And of course you have the tower. Once more with LEGO Elves, I do bemoan the lack of mini dolls. I wish they had more characters factored into these builds. I think they would have made that much more dynamic to have characters factored in other than just these 2, but it is what it is. For $60 back in 2018, it didn't seem like a bad deal, but today that's $74, and honestly, I'm not super convinced by the size of the tower. I just feel like maybe I'm a little biased by other towers they've done and other villain castles, but if you think back, the Goblin King's castle was $80 back in 2017, the prior year, and was just so much larger than this. So while I like the color scheme of teal and dark blue and the transparent neon green, I definitely feel like for the price, it maybe should have included a little bit more. And well, that little more was about to come in the summer wave. If you may notice, there are Technic attachment points on either side of the castle, although only one other module would ever be released. I have to wonder if they were planning more modules, but just ran out of budget to include them in sets. But now let's move on to the main plotline. Chronologically speaking, the next set that we meet is technically 41196, the Elvenstar Tree Bat Attack, which was actually the final LEGO Elves set ever. However, since this building served as a base of operations throughout the entirety of the webisodes for LEGO Elves 2018, this was the next thing that we see. As the elves are trying to figure out how to restore Azari's firepower, they encounter the mysterious elf Lumia, who seems to have the powers to transform into both a wolf and an eagle, both of which appear as their own sets. Lumia transforms into human form and leads them to the Elvenstar Tree, a mysterious location hidden away from the Shadow World, which is the sanctuary of all the elemental creatures. There, the elves are introduced to the free elemental creatures, the Earth Fox, the Wind Dragon, and the Sea Turtle, and they are instructed to bond with these elemental creatures for them to be able to stand a chance to fight against Noctura and the power of Shadow. It's at this location that we learn that Noctura and Lumia used to be best friends, and they essentially were traveling together, shape-shifting into different animals, until Lumia actually betrays Noctura, realizing her powers are growing too great and creating a shadow world for her to live in. Luring Noctura in with the promise of a world all to herself, Lumia manages to leave Noctura in the Shadow Realm and seal it off forever, preventing Noctura from ever being able to return to the main world of Elvendale. And now, Noctura is bent on coming back and defeating Lumia for betraying her so many years ago. This is a set that technically depicts a final battle that didn't really happen in the show, because, spoiler alert, Noctura never actually leaves the Shadow Realm. The elves actually have to go to the Shadow Realm when Farron and the Earth Fox are captured, but I guess it depicts a scenario of a battle where you can see Noctura in her bat form, since she can transform into a bat, leading a siege upon the Elvenstar Treehouse. This was pretty much the ultimate quintessential LEGO Elves set. It was almost like a reimagining of the early treehouse that we got in 2015, just with much more detailed building techniques and styles, and really trying to emphasize each and every one of the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. I really love the way that this is sculpted. The architecture of this treehouse makes it one of the best LEGO Elves buildings ever. But I also can't help to feel that for the price, it definitely feels like there should be a little bit more going on. If not at the very least, just including all the members of the main cast in the final set would have been really nice. The set retailed for $80 or 80 euros in 2018 when it released, which adjusted for inflation is around $99 or $100 today, and it came with 883 pieces. Despite this, it only came with 3 mini dolls: Lumia, Azari, and Nida, with all 3 of them appearing in other sets, plus it also did include 2 different bats, including Hippo, the good bat, as well as the shadow bat Craze. Especially because this set featured all 4 elements, I would have really loved to also see Farron and Ira featured in the set as well. I think having at least the 4 core elemental elves would have been really perfect for a treehouse like this, but alas, for whatever reason, this theme really decided to skimp out on mini dolls and characters, and so we're just stuck with the 3 that we got. I'm going to start off by taking a look at some of these side builds first before we dive into the main tree here, and the first thing that we want to take a look at is the Noctura bat form. This was the final LEGO Elves set featured in the summer wave of Elves 2018, so they really had to go all out on making this the final showdown. This is Noctura's final form, where we see her transformed into a full-on bat, and honestly, it's okay. It's a little small, but I get as a side build what they were going for. It would still have been really cool to actually have a very large bat-themed Noctura set all to herself, and I guess she does get a chariot, but this does feel a little bit tiny as the final boss of the wave. Even the Goblin King's dragon was a lot larger than this. Still, they made use of the pieces they had, and I do like the usage of the fox head in black being used for the bat, which actually works quite well thanks to those very pointy ears. The jaw is recolored in teal with a black tongue, allowing you to open and close it, but it's the same jaw from the Dragon Wave, and it's also using the same exact wings as the ones featured on her tower, which we saw previously. The wings are mounted on mixel joints, which I think is a good touch because you can always use them to angle them in different ways to actually make them feel more aggressive and really give a lot of character to the build. And I also really like the way the legs are done. They're just these tiny little legs. I'm almost kind of surprised they allowed it to have such small legs given how stringent they were on articulation in the past, but it allows it to have a lot more maneuverability and posability when it comes to flying this around in battle. Overall, it's a nice color scheme, and I think it is a good final boss, but maybe something that could be a little bit bigger or probably should have deserved a set to itself, and the parts budget maybe being used towards amplifying the rest of the set, or just throwing in more mini dolls. The other side build here is the portal. And honestly, I have mixed feelings about the portal, because the thing is, this is pretty much the biggest portal build that we've gotten so far. Surrounding the trees, it's a really nice build, and I like how it is circular in shape. You have a fun function in the back of the portal where you can actually launch characters into battle. So if you want to, you can take a bat, load it up here, and then have the bat essentially be flying into battle, which obviously, since they're coming from the portal, is a really cool play feature. The downside of this play feature, though, is that unfortunately there is really no way to show the portal energy swirling on the inside of the circle. Whereas all of the other LEGO Elves portals showcase the swirling energy via a dish or some sort of additional piece, we didn't really have anything like that for this set, and I feel like it is a little disappointing to not have any sort of portal being factored in, because right now it just feels like an unactivated portal. This doesn't read to me as an energy portal where things can pass through. Here it just looks like one that's turned off. However, they did have an additional play feature where you could use the firing crossbow in the set to shoot down targets, which I guess is a nice little additional play feature, but I also would have just really liked getting some sort of transparent dish that you could use. Heck, if you want to still have the function, have the dish fold upwards, and then you can use the function, but close it down when it's done, and it would be just as fine. Otherwise, it's an okay build, but I definitely would love to see somebody try to mod this to actually have the energy portal on the inside. But now we can take a look at the build for the set itself, and this is a really nicely detailed treehouse. I'm going to start off with the lower levels and work our way up, where here you can see they have a little mailbox here, which is quite nice because it is still using that Elvendale mail logo that we first saw a couple of years back for the Dragon Wave. The roots of the tree are nicely done, and it's a good integration of the little ugly rock pieces as the tree trunks. I actually think that is a pretty nice way to do the function here. On the inside of the tree, you can see that there is a really nice little bathing area, as well as some details on the water staff. So this is a whole water area, and there actually is a really nice hidden function. Once you get on the inside of the treehouse, you'll notice a potion that is brewing alongside some interesting different bits and pieces of potion making equipment, but turning the gear on the side of the model reveals that on the inside, yes, those are beds. So they had to include beds somewhere in this LEGO Elves set. We're like 20 for 20 with every LEGO Elves building featuring a bed, and this one is no different. This one actually does have two that fold out underneath the potion areas, and it was so important to include the beds that they actually made it an action feature to deploy them. Honestly, I respect the level of commitment at this point. Moving on to the rest of the lower level, there's actually a really clever function where at first it might look like there is no way to get up for there are no stairs, but take this branch and twist it outside, and there you go. The staircase magically forms thanks to the power of Earth, and you can go up the stairs onto the main floor of the treehouse. Up on the main floor here, you've got some nice pieces of artwork showcasing Lumia against the other elemental guardians, where you can see that they knew each other from when they were very young. And over here, there's a really nice area where elves can sit around with each of their individual symbols, one symbol for each of the core elves, and have a nice meal together. If only all 4 of the elemental elves were included in a set like this. Moving on from that, though, we have a nice area here that's basically just a defense portion for the water area. I think it works okay, and essentially what you're supposed to do is place your water character here, I guess barely, maybe without accessories or having the accessories bent all the way back, and then have her be looking out of this defense section and firing the crossbow at the encroaching attackers. Unfortunately, the crossbow cannot bend upwards, so you can't really aim against flying attacks, but you can shoot down anything that is on the ground. Moving on to the next levels here, we can actually take a look at the upper section, which is a bit of a training and blacksmith area. Here is a weight bag where the elves can practice their fighting skills. Presumably you can use the hammer to battle against this little training bag here, and you also have that fire hammer integrated into the build as the crafting hammer to create a sword. And I like the usage of the metallic rock piece that was used for the LEGO City mining sets of that time to really showcase that you have some ingots and ore being used to actually craft your different weapons. Taking a look at this from a bit of a higher angle here, let's just take a closer look at this level. Finally, the last section here is just the wind section, which is a constellation and sort of telescope piece. The constellation doesn't really look like much to me. I guess it's supposed to be like a bow and arrow, but I don't know. I don't really see it, but it would have been cool to get a reference to something else, like Bionicle had a reference to the Kanohi How in the Harry Potter set we got recently, but it is still nice to see a constellation featured there, adding on to the world building of elves. And with that, we've taken a look at the Elvenstar Bat Tree attack. So how do I feel about the set? Well, for $100 in today's money, I think that it looks really nice aesthetically speaking on the outside. It presents a really nice exterior, but honestly, that's kind of all it is. A lot of the build is just a facade, and there isn't really a ton going on in terms of three-dimensionality inside the treehouse itself. There's a couple things that you can do here and there to just actuate some functions, but by and large, it basically is just for show. I do like the slide that's snaking around the side of the tree. You can use that to actually have your characters slide down, which is a nice little fun play feature, but otherwise, there's honestly not a ton that you can actually do with the treehouse. Aesthetically speaking, it looks cool, but as the final LEGO Elves set, I kind of wish that it was either a little bit bigger or just had a bit more going on with it. Maybe scrap the portal and scrap the bat and make it truly the ultimate Elves treehouse, and while it is a big improvement over the 2015 one and shows just how far LEGO has come in terms of developing the architecture and piece detailings of this theme, I really do feel like it kind of ended on a whimper, not necessarily a bang, with a set like this, especially when you compare it to other larger LEGO Elves sets like the massive Shadow Castle and even the Goblin King's Castle itself. This falls a little bit short. But now let's move on to the next phase of the story. After the elves meet Lumia and are introduced to the elemental guardians, who also have speaking roles, by the way. These are not mere beasts, they actually can talk and communicate with the elves. Each of them has to undergo a training and bonding arc, where they have to form a bond with the elemental creature before they decide to have them aid them in battle. Ira is up first, forming a bond with the Wind Dragon as they travel to some of these floating islands in the elven sky with some really nice and interesting detailed architecture that is a little different compared to other buildings that we've gotten for elves. One thing I do want to note here is that unfortunately my copy of the set is for whatever reason missing stickers on the building. I don't really know why that's the case, but if anyone is selling the sticker sheet, please do let me know. Otherwise, aside from a missing harp here, the set is 100% complete as it is, and the set that you're seeing right here is 41193 Ira and the Song of the Wind Dragon. It retailed for $40 or 40 euros back in March of 2018 and contained 451 pieces, which adjusted for inflation is around $49 to $50 today, which honestly feels about right. This set was the only one to include Ira, and it also of course includes Lumia and the Shadow Bat Phil, plus a little bird to accompany them. The set is divided in between a couple of different things. You have the Wind Dragon, you have a musical song instrument-based building here, which is operated by this little bird, and then you have a tiny little blimp for the bat to fly to chase after the dragon. I'm not sure why a flying bat needs a blimp, but I guess maybe the reason for that is because this blimp has a stud shooter on it, and well, you can see it already did that much damage there against the elves, so maybe it truly is a very powerful thing. But I'm going to start off by taking a look at the dragon, which is what the set is really named after. And honestly, as one of the big elemental beasts, as one of the main creatures of the elements, I don't really know how I feel about this build. It is utilizing the wyvern-like aesthetic where it's got only 2 legs and the wings, but this is a really, really small dragon. It's actually a lot smaller than even the smallest ones that we got for the 2016 Dragon Wave. And because of that, a lot of the design does end up suffering as a result. One thing they were trying to go for with this dragon was having it be more energy-based with some electricity-like components for the wings, and while I do appreciate the nicely colored pieces being used here and the trans purple and light blue also used for LEGO Nexo Knights around that same time, they're not super convincing to me as wings. I always prefer it when LEGO doesn't do these little energy blast pieces for wings and actually just ends up using a wing element, or even better, something fabric, because that always feels more real to me, and unfortunately this does suffer from it. I guess they did try to have these lightning contrails on the back to try to make it look like it was a full-on wing, but you really have to let your brain fill in the gaps here, and I feel like even if they just had, like, I don't know, one other wing piece that went like this, one other wing piece here, maybe it would have felt a little bit better in terms of a full-on wing to actually have 3 prongs, but with just 2 prongs and 1 small piece at the back, I am not super convinced that these are actually airborne wings. The body of the dragon itself is very constrained, and you do have that same issue with a lot of the posability coming with the fact that you can't move the legs past the vertically straight down position just because of the way they wanted to pose it, but thankfully they do allow you to rotate the legs back, so I feel like that does solve a lot of the problems with posability. It just feels very undersized for such an important elemental creature, and as the final dragon we would ever get for the LEGO Elves wave, it does feel a little disappointing, especially compared to a lot of the other dragons that we got in the Dragon Year that were just simply a lot more majestic. I also do want to note that the color scheme for this being predominantly lavender is the same exact color scheme they used for the much larger Wind Dragon back in 2016, and I probably would have preferred them to do something a little bit different, like in the prior years with the Goblin line we had a dark blue water dragon instead of a light blue one. Having a different color use, like maybe a pure purple dragon, would have differentiated this enough, but as it is right now, it just feels like almost a miniature baby version of the other Wind Dragon, which isn't really what it's trying to come across. So I appreciate the effort, but this is maybe one of my least favorite elemental creatures. Moving on to the side build though, I actually really like this. This small little blimp is super charming, the building techniques are actually quite clever, and I like how it can be piloted by just the single bat pilot right there. Just feels really nice as a little flyable thing, and I definitely do appreciate being able to glide through the skies and have an opponent build for there to be a bit of conflict in the box, which of course Ira can shoot down with her new bow. The main build of the set though is this flying island, and I do love the idea of a flying island. I always felt that having flying islands in a fantasy world is super cool and interesting, and I love how you have a building built on top of it, but I probably would have preferred that most of the pieces went into the Wind Dragon if it ended up being that lackluster. Still, that being said, it is a really nice little build. You've got little clear crystals poking out of the side here, and I just love the way that you can adjust the angles of them to make them feel a little bit more dynamic. You have a platform that is controllable here, so you can move from one spot to the next to traverse the flying islands. It's a very simple function, but one that works pretty well, and it really does feel like this is built out of the clouds, where you can see the island kind of scoping down inwards, making it feel like part of the clouds are covering up the bottom of the island itself. Again, I lost the stickers on this somehow, so my apologies for that, but basically the stickers were all music oriented on here, and there was a banjo included in the set too, and of course, you have the quintessential LEGO Elves bed. Once more, the LEGO Elves building has a bed featured inside the models, so that's a nice little touch, but overall, it's an okay build. I definitely feel like it is kind of two-dimensional. It's pretty thin and narrow. I like the color scheme and I like the aesthetics, but again, it definitely just feels like maybe more focus should have been placed on the dragon and a little less on the side build, even though aesthetically speaking, I do like the color scheme. With that, we can now move on to the next set. The final elemental guardian that we meet alongside these adventures is the water turtle, and Nida has to form a bond with the water turtle, learning to stand up for herself and not take orders from anybody, and really just uncovering her true self before the water turtle was willing to help her out. This is represented in set number 41191, Nida and the water turtle ambush, and I do appreciate how all of the animal focus sets do have some sort of aspect of the creatures trying to entrap them. So here, this was a set that retailed for $20 or 25 euros. It had 205 pieces, which roughly translates to around 25 US dollars today, making it also pretty decent value. It only included one single mini doll, which was Nida here, and it did include another little bat as well, Fury, although I don't really count that as a character, and you also have a brand new little turtle, which is recolored from the LEGO Friends theme with a special elves-oriented print. One thing I do want to note is that there also was a disc shooter mounted on top here, just a really small one. Don't know where that went, my apologies, but it offered a little bit of water elemental defense against the evil boat. And yes, this evil boat is equipped to capture the turtle, for you should fire the chain out at it, and the entire goal is for it to be able to capture the turtle and drag it back with it. I don't know how this boat plans to drag such a large turtle back with such a small size, but you know, I appreciate the effort. The Bat Fury is trying their best, and you can see it actually does have a really nice recolor of the Chima Batwing in trans neon orange there to accompany all of the LEGO Elves sets of this particular lineup. But now let's really just focus our attention on the turtle that's included in the set, because that is basically the primary focus of the build. This is actually a pretty solid little animal. I actually quite like it, and yes, it's limited in articulation and you can't do much with it, and it's maybe not the most dynamic for an action sequence, but I think it totally makes sense as the guardian of water and the oceans and wildlife in that sense. You can move the legs on mixel joints, so you can kind of have it be swimming along, which is just a nice little touch. You can even waggle the tail on mixel joints as well, and it has these really nice dark azure shell colorations with these transparent blue spikes on the top, which really just make it feel elevated and special in terms of an elemental creature. The head is just hollow underneath, and you can see how that's done here. It's a pretty simple head, but I like how you can rotate it back and forth, and thankfully the neck is mounted on a mixel ball joint, so you can raise and lower the head as you see fit. There's also a spot for Nida to be able to sit, which is good, utilizing the printed Elvenstar piece to showcase the seat for all of the characters, so once bonded, Nida can now ride this turtle into battle. The turtle, as well as the rest of the elemental creatures, would play a very important role leading into the battle ahead, but once having their bonds formed with all the creatures, it was then time to delve into the shadow world and go fight back against Noctura, for upon their adventures, Farron and the Earth Fox are actually captured, and it's up to the rest of the elves to free them. So let's jump forwards to that showdown. With Farron as well as all of the elemental creatures captured and now held in captivity by Noctura, all of the elves' elemental powers are now gone, and they were forced to use their weapons and venture into the Shadow Realms alone. Alongside Lumia, they managed to make their way into the Shadow Realm, where it is a very treacherous world filled with bats and shadow creatures, and of course Noctura as she begins to enact the final stages of her plan involving all four elements. To prepare for this final battle, Lumia shapeshifts into an eagle, which Emily Jones can actually ride into battle, and that is what is depicted here. This is 41190, Emily Jones and the Eagle Getaway. It retailed for $15 or 15 euros back in March of 2018 and had 149 pieces, which roughly translates to around $18 to $19 today. It only included one single mini doll, Emily Jones, with her medallion included in the figure itself, as well as the Shadow Bat Vespe, who did appear in a couple of other different sets. Now, the primary focus of the build is, of course, around the eagle build, which is the shape-shifted form of Lumia here. Emily can sit on the back of the eagle, and it is maybe a little bit comical because the eagle is a very, very small creature, but you know, they made it work, and it actually does have exclusive printed components for the eyes here. The head can move up and down, the wings can flap and are molded in pearl gold, and you also have a very, very small little leg motion right here where you can actually angle each and every one of the individual feet. using the affectionately referred to as Among Us connection clip here, which actually does work out quite well for the feet of an eagle. You can adjust the wings on the back here, and this is probably the most rudimentary small creature that they could make for LEGO Elves. It is the most basic, the most simple, but it kind of works for what it is, and I definitely feel like I could totally see a mini doll transforming into an eagle of the size, a bit larger than a standard eagle, but not that much larger. As far as the evil bats are concerned, we have this little bat outpost here, and that is depicted with the trans neon green bat wings atop it, as well as a really nice treasure chest, which can pop open, revealing some crystals on the inside. The top of the set has a disc launcher where pushing a lever on the back allows you to fire the disc launcher, and I actually have another copy of Vespe. He's already sleeping in bed, where yes, once again, the LEGO Elves designers have factored in a small little upside down bed for Vespe to sleep when he's not attacking the heroes of the land. It's a nice little play feature, and I find it very funny how, yes, again, even a build this small has a little bat there, and there even are little pieces of pie that both the eagle can eat, as well as this spider that is devouring a delicious meal. It's a very small build, and for $15, there's honestly not a lot going on here, but honestly, I feel like this is one of the strongest entry points into the LEGO Elves theme. It's a heck of a lot more interesting than the Nida gondola of the previous wave, and even compared to some of the other ones where you encounter the dragon eggs and have a bit of terrain there, this I feel like is even more dynamic because you have a creature, you have a battle, you have a evil looking kind of landscape here, and all of it is tying together to have a small conflict in a box, which is always a good thing. So, nothing really that bad I have to say about this one, and let's move into the final showdown.
So this is it. This is the final showdown. After having made their way to the Shadow Realm, the elves work to free the elemental creatures, and an all-out elemental battle begins between Noctura and her Shadow Warriors, as well as the elemental forces fighting back. Eventually, Emily realizes that she has the power and magic inside of her to conjure up a sword of light, striking down Noctura for good, and eventually, after a sacrifice is made, Noctura and Lumia both fade away into nothingness, with a new Guardian of Light established in the form of Emily, and the rest of the Elemental Guardians now being the main character elves, with the story finally concluded. The set final showdown depicts Emily versus Noctura. 41195 is their showdown, and it came with 650 pieces and retailed for $50 US, which is actually pretty good value back in 2018. Even adjusting for inflation, that's around $62 today, making this a really remarkably good value for a LEGO Elves set. You have a fairly substantial side build that can actually combine to the large tower, as well as a really nice carriage with a very fun play function incorporated into it, which allows you to flap the bat wings, plus a pretty sizable build for Lumia the wolf, as well as two of the mini doll characters. Again, I feel like maybe they should have included at least a couple more characters here, but really the most important ones are depicted, and you also have the bats Phil and Mizo respectively right in the center as well. However, I'm actually going to start off by focusing on the main build of the set itself, which is this location-based cauldron. It's actually quite interesting because on the box art, this is really shown kind of in the back corner of the set. It almost makes it feel like it blends into the background, but it absolutely is a pretty big and prominent part of the build. It has Technic pins to connect to Noctura's tower, and it has a big play feature as well. The way this works is you can lift up the trash exhaust here, and you pour ingredients like 1x1 studs into the cauldron, push a lever in the back, and boom, a bat is going to materialize, and all of the waste materials will flow out into the exhaust on the side here, or the garbage disposal area, and it is really a cool way to create a living bat. I guess that's kind of how all the bats are made. Noctura just cooks them up in this cauldron. It's a super simple feature that just has this little platform raise and lower, but I think it's pretty cool. It's cute for what it is, and it works very nicely. You have a really nice bit of terrain here with two different mushrooms in the teal and cool yellow being used here. You've also got a spider as well as an eye inside of a jar, which is a nice little touch there. And I also really like how if you kind of fold this outwards, you'll notice that one of the books in the bookcase can be removed, and lo and behold, it is the Goblin Eye book, suggesting that Noctura may also be behind the Goblin creation as well.
Moving on to the back, yes, it is a LEGO Elves building or piece of scenery, so yes, it includes beds for not one, but both bats. You can stick the bats on the underside of these studs here, and the bats can be sleeping upside down, peacefully waiting for them to be called into battle. And I just really respect their insistence on must including a bed. Like, they have to include a bed in every single LEGO Elves set. Moving alongside here, there are these really interesting vinyl elements, which are kind of just leftover vinyl pieces from the main bat wings that you can move to the side and reveal some hidden passageways and caves with some lava underneath. Not much is going on the backside here, and I think they probably could have used these vinyl elements to maybe greater effect on the front of the model hanging downwards, but I appreciate the effort, and it is a nice surprise to see these pieces featured on the back of the model. I'm going to jump into the next largest thing here, though, which is the Lumia Wolf build, and this is another one of those LEGO Elves animal builds that I'm a little mixed on, because here's the thing with this build. So, it has a lot of posability in the back legs. You can move the back legs backwards, which are really cool, so you can have it in like a crouching pose like so, and really get all sorts of fun poses out of it for the back legs. But the front legs have the same exact problem as the other LEGO Elves animals, where you can't move them out of just being perfectly vertically straight. I always value posability above almost all else, maybe to a too unreasonable of a degree for my LEGO items, but it is just annoying not being able to move these outwards. I really wish that you had the ability to just move the legs out past this point, and I feel like it does hurt the articulation of the set quite a lot. Otherwise though, I do like the reuse of the fox head for the wolf here. I think it totally works for this particular creature. It's been used for a fox, a wolf, and a bat, and it kind of works for all three of those applications, which is pretty impressive if I do say so myself. And if you do bend the legs all the way forwards, you can kind of get them to rotate outwards, and I think that probably will then give you the best pose out of all of the poses you can get it in. But again, it is annoying having the restriction posability there. You have nice stickers being used for the tail here, wagging back and forth on a mixel joint, but honestly, this build isn't really anything that we haven't seen before. It is fairly basic for the style of the build, and what is a lot more interesting to me at least is the villain carriage. So let's wheel that in right now. This is such an inspired design, but I really love how they're able to pull it off. You have a lever on the back here that allows the bat wings to flap, and yeah, maybe the effect isn't maybe as convincing as it probably should be, but I really appreciate how much ambition the designer went for to pull off such an interesting play feature like this. It's unlike anything we've ever seen in a LEGO set before and since, utilizing the movement of a vinyl element to actually look like wings flapping is really cool and interesting, and I kind of wish that LEGO would do more stuff like this with their vinyl elements. It really brings the set to life, and it is a super simple play feature to just push the lever on the back and it actuates the wings flapping. The carriage itself is also really cool. I love the gunmetal gray recolors of the LEGO Disney Princess wheel elements, which really gives it a regal look, but also a very ornate look that is kind of evil inspired. You've got the two firing crossbows on the side of the vehicle, as well as the dark blue and teal coloration, which you can move upwards and allow the evil villain Noctura to be removed out from here and feel free to fly around and do her evil deeds. It's just a really cool build, and definitely one of my personal favorite villain vehicle builds. What's even funnier is that you can put the Bat Mizo on the front here, where he's actually wearing goggles because they're going so fast he literally needs to wear goggles against the wind. So it's just a fun build. I just love seeing this flapping. It's a really, really interesting function, and one of the most unique that LEGO has included in a set. But with the final battle over, that concludes the story of LEGO Elves. All of the elves are reunited, their elemental powers are back, the elemental creatures are free, and with both Guardians of Shadow and Light dissolved into thin air, they have to form their own path forwards now without having these Guardians looking after them. It's an interesting way to end the series, and it did leave the door open for more and more adventures, but sadly, this was the final year of LEGO Elves. Declining sales in 2017 meant that no matter how well this wave did, LEGO had already moved on, and they weren't planning on making any more Elves sets in 2019. So after they scrapped the cameo for LEGO Elves in the LEGO Movie 2, that was it. This was the final wave. So what do I think about this final wave? Well, let's zoom out and share my thoughts right now.
And so there it is, the final wave of LEGO Elves. Story-wise, I actually am pretty happy with where the story left off. Given that Elves was mostly sort of a serialized adventure, where characters from one year wouldn't necessarily be impactful or move on to the next year other than the main cast, I think it made sense to have a big climactic battle of light versus darkness, good versus evil, be the way that Elves goes out. Was this always intended to be the final year? I guess we'll never know, but it is a pretty fitting theme for the final year to be based around these epic forces of good and evil. Here's where I really feel that the minifigures and mini dolls of LEGO Elves really hit their stride, having the elemental abilities being represented in brick form, as well as the specialized weapons. This was a really solid year for accessories, and while the bats are not the most interesting or exciting collectible, I think they're fun as is, and they make for cute little villain sidekicks, even though definitely the baby dragons were the highlights of LEGO Elves for these small creatures, and I really do feel like they probably should have just stuck to giving us more and more colors of those. Now, in terms of the sets, I definitely do feel that these are a little bit mixed because obviously they were trying to go all out. There's a lot that I do like about the color scheme with the teal and dark blue of the villains, and the treehouse is amazing, but even the large sculpture builds feel a little bit smaller compared to what we were used to in prior years. Compared to sets like the Goblin King's Fortress or Regana's Shadow Castle, which were really large and impressive villain builds, the villain structure this time has a fun feature with the bat wings unfurling, but it's very clear they were handicapped by the price point, and especially when it comes to the final wave of a LEGO series, the price point for the sets is always a lot lower. They give final waves of themes less effort than most because it's kind of on its way out. Still, I'm really happy that we did get a whole host of different elemental animals, including new animal head molds, which is pretty rare to get, especially for the final wave, and I have to say that for a final wave, it's really cool that every single one of the main characters got represented. We had a fire lion, the earth fox, the wind dragon, the water turtle, and so on and so forth, including the light fox as well. All in all, I really do like this wave. I think these sets are pretty good, I think that it was a pretty solid way to end the theme, but I definitely do feel like LEGO Elves could have been one of those themes that just lasted forever and forever, giving us new concepts and villains and opponents and new adventures every single wave, and while it did last a lot longer than most other original themes, lasting 4 years instead of the usual 3 or sometimes even 2.5, I really do feel that Elves was such a rich concept that we haven't really seen reflected in LEGO since, and that's a bit of a shame. I'm kind of sad that if, again, you go back and watch the previous video, the 2017 coverage of LEGO Elves, it just didn't really perform that well, and because 2017 didn't do well, despite it being arguably the best year, they decided to just, you know what, shutter the theme and move on. Who knows, if LEGO Elves had done well in 2017, we might be living in a world where LEGO Elves is still coming out today, and we're getting more and more different characters, lore, and creatures, but as it is, this sums up our look at all of LEGO Elves from 2015 to 2018. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this really underrated theme? I've been really loving seeing people watch these videos and comment about discovering LEGO Elves through these, and I hope that you enjoyed a bit of a story recap as well as a set review mixed into one, because here at Duckbricks, we do everything all at once. That's all for this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and let me know in the comments what other LEGO themes you want to see me revisit in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.